Robinson. Love-hate running back time, and there is no better player to start with than Bijan Robinson. Not only the best running back in this draft, top 5 player in this draft. Just the classic Arthur Smith had to have it selection. You look at Arthur Smith, I mean, when he was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee in 2019, 2020, they ran Derrick Henry into the ground, and why not? And that gives you a lot of hope for Bijan Robinson, who is an immensely talented 3-down player out of the backfield. So, Barry, I mean, a lot to love with this selection, this landing spot. Of course, most importantly, the player.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we should just sort of paraphrase that, hey, love-hate is about players whose fantasy stock improved because of what their teams did during the NFL draft. Sometimes it's players drafted, sometimes it's players on their teams. Hate, of course, is the opposite. And Bijan Robinson lands in Atlanta, a team that led the NFL in running back rushing yards last year, had the second most running back carries with a 5th-round rookie and Cordero Patterson. And now they get Bijan Robinson. I think, you think about Arthur Smith as the offense coordinator in Tennessee when he had Derrick Henry, 718 touches in the 2 seasons that Smith was the OC for Tennessee. That's in the realm of possibility here. I'm not saying Bijan Robinson is Derrick Henry. I think he's more versatile. To your point, like we talked about this on draft night, you can put him in the slot, you can put him in the passing game, you can do a lot of different things, put him in motion. So I think Bijan Robinson is basically like a rich man's version of Cordero Patterson. I mean, they found some success the last 2 years with Patterson using his versatility in a bunch of different ways. And all due respect to Patterson, who I love, who I've always carried, the flag for, he ain't Bijan Robinson. I mean, Bijan Robinson is just
how many are?
Just right, exactly. I think he's an immediate top 5 fantasy running back this year.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Bijan is this is probably the best possible landing spot in terms of fantasy value. Like, this would be the one team you would actually pick above everyone else. I mean, there was rumors initially that he might go to Dallas, which would have been, frankly, a disaster from a fantasy perspective because it would have tanked both him and Tony Pollard. But the fact that he goes to Atlanta, and I know there's some concern about like Tyler Algier. I don't think Tyler Algier is cutting into Bijan Robinson. I think it's just going to be the Derrick Henry show, but with Bijan.
Tyler Algier is insurance if you draft Bijan Robinson, but I think you could see some plays. They'll have some packages where Algier's in the backfield, and that maybe they both start in the backfield, and then Bijan Robinson, moves out to the slot or something like that, or goes in motion. But if you draft Bijan Robinson, your concerns are not going to be Tyler Algier cutting into his, okay, fine. He doesn't get 28 touches a game. He gets 24. Like, you're going to be just fine and very happy if you have Bijan Robinson on your fantasy team this year.
And how about this? The Falcons, it got even better on day 2. They took Matthew Bergeron from Syracuse. He's going to move from tackle to guard. I thought he was one of the best run blockers in the entire draft. They already have Chris Lindstrom, a top 5 guard in the NFL. So Bijan's going to a team that there's a really good run blocking offensive line in front of him. So much to love about Bijan. Let's close it on this. I know this is wildly early, but clearly first-round pick in redraft leagues.
Oh, yeah.
And
no
but where? Like, how high can you take him?
I think if he was drafted within the top 6 or 7, you're not.
It's not crazy, right?
They're not crazy, right? I mean, honestly, like, I think he's probably top. My overall top 100 for the season is going to come out on Thursday of this week, and so I'm still noodling with it. But you've got a couple of wide receivers there, obviously Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase at the top, and then you've got some of the other running backs as well. You've got the McCaffreys, and we'll see about Eckler, there as well. But I mean, Bijan's right there. Like, it's not a long list of running backs that you feel like you would rather have than him. So
is it just McCaffrey and Eckler? Jacobs? Maybe Jacobs?
I'd rather Saquon. Jacobs, Saquon, like, he's in that mix.
Yeah.
Like, he's in that Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs mix.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, like, they're all sort of right there, and so my guess is again, I have to still crunch a few numbers, but there's a very good chance that, it's McCaffrey and Eckler are the only 2 running backs I have ranked higher than him.
Yep.
Next up on the love list, Tony Pollard. As Dallas, the only running back they added was Deuce Vaughn, and that was in the 6th round, and far from a workhorse as Deuce Vaughn. But sticking with Pollard here, I mean, this has to help his rankings just because it's all designed to be the Tony Pollard show.
He's had 13 career games where he's gotten at least 15 touches, right? He averaged 19.6 fantasy points per game in those 13 career games where he's gotten 15 or more touches, which, again, given the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's no longer on this team, there's talk that they might bring him back. But at the moment, to your point, the Cowboys were rumored to be on the Bijan Robinson sweepstakes. They didn't add really anyone other than Deuce Vaughn. And in the 6th round, which means Tony Pollard's got this job to himself, and he should be getting at least 15 touches per game. And if career averages mean anything, 19.6 fantasy points per game last year, guys, would have been running back 3. The list we just mentioned of McCaffrey, Eckler, Jacobs, Barkley, and Bijan Robinson, Tony Pollard's right in that mix as well. Yeah. Like, he's a clear-cut top 10 fantasy running back this season.
Yeah, and also just with how dynamic he is in the passing game too. If he just gets 15 carries per game, that could make him the best running back in football from a fantasy perspective.
15 carries and 3 or 4 receptions. Mike McCarthy said this offseason, he's going to be calling the plays this year. Kellen Moore now in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Mike McCarthy said he wants to run more, which is a little nutty given that you're paying Dak Prescott what you're paying him. But whatever, Mike McCarthy. The fact of the matter is Pollard should be used early and often. Again, at the moment, we'll see if Zeke comes back. But at the moment, the only real competition for touches back there feels like Deuce Vaughn, who they drafted in the 6th round. And Deuce Vaughn, I feel like, was a better draft day story than necessarily a threat to Tony Pollard playing time.
He absolutely was. I mean, 5'5", 179 pounds. He is going to sprinkle him in as a pass-catching back. And while that was great news for Tony Pollard's usage, it was even better news for the Vaughn family. Deuce's dad, Cris, a scout with the Cowboys, and got to make that decision for him to go to Dallas.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
Hey, it's going good. This is Dad. My phone wasn't working. Look at here, man. You want to come to work with me next week?
I wouldn't mind that at all.
I'm so excited. There's just something magical about this moment that may be bigger than we even realize here talking to you on the phone. But you is now a Dallas Cowboy. Your daddy just handed the card in.
Hey, Deuce, Mike McCarthy, congratulations.
What's up, Coach? I appreciate it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been doing this a long time. This is so special for you and your father and your family. And if you could make sure you drive, so make sure your dad's on time for work, we'd appreciate it.
An awesome moment for the Vaughn family
Right.
and for the Dallas Cowboys as a whole.
Meanwhile, Mike McCarthy just a stray bullet into apparently Deuce Vaughn like a little tardy at work. Like, what's going on? Like,
Greatest moment for the Vaughn family of their entire lives. Mike McCarthy goes, it's Mike McCarthy's time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mike McCarthy still got
You guys have that in common. Like, when things are going really well, how about a little joke in there somewhere?
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of, right, exactly.
Also a stray bullet at Mike McCarthy there from Matthew Berry. Just love taking shots at
I
Mike
love
McCarthy.
taking shots at Mike McCarthy. I am no fan of Mike McCarthy. There, I'll just say it. I've hidden it well, I think, for a couple of years. # free Aaron Jones. I did start that. That's when it started. That's when I decided I truly did not like Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I've never met him as a person. He might be a lovely human being, but as a head professional football coach, I am not a fan.
Mike McCarthy, Diamond Club member of the hate list, but back to the love list.
No one has done less with more talent than Mike McCarthy in the NFL.
Ramondre Stevenson.
Hit Aaron Rodgers. For a long time.
Yeah.
He did.
He made the Super Bowl once.
Yep.
With the most talented quarterback ever.
With the most talented quarterback ever. With one of the 5 greatest quarterbacks to ever play the sport.
Yep.
Yeah. Once.
15-1, lost to the Giants. Eli. Yeah. Hakeem Nicks. Hail Mary. Yeah. Didn't work out for Mike
McCarthy roast. Good Lord. Ramondre Stevenson makes the love list.
We're happy for the Vaughn family.
Yes.
But, what a great moment for the Vaughn family.
Great moment for the Vaughn family. Spoiled by Mike McCarthy.
Spoiled by Mike McCarthy.
And they won't
everything
use Deuce Vaughn the right way.
As everything always is. But the theme of established running backs that have sort of the backfield themselves, and you go through the draft hoping like, oh, please don't take anyone that's going to be real competition for him. The Cowboys did not add anyone as of this moment that is real competition for Tony Pollard. And Connor, neither did the Patriots.
Which is shocking because they love to take day 3 running backs. They took 2 last year, but Jay, this year they said, no, we're good. Ramondre Stevenson, it is your time. They did not add a running back at all throughout this draft.
It's always been weird, Belichick's infatuation with adding running backs early. Remember Sony Michel? Would he go in the first round?
Oh, he certainly did.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense at the time.
How about Lawrence Maroney?
Lawrence Maroney, the great Lawrence Maroney. Yeah, with Ramondre, the thing is, and we've talked about this before, but he was banged up for most of last year, where he's always on the injury report, didn't look the same, and obviously, he had workload issues too, but, he's a guy who, I wouldn't be surprised if he led the league in rushing. He has that kind of upside, so Ramondre, he'll be a top 10 running back drafted off the board, I would think, next season.
What was exciting for me last year is that he had 17% target share, right? 3rd highest among running backs, and so we'll see. There's rumors about Mac Jones maybe moving on, but at the moment, it's either going to be Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi under center for the Patriots, and they don't mind checking down. And so Ramondre Stevenson not only has the between the tackles role that him and Damian Harris split last year, because Harris, of course, is in Buffalo. But he's got the quote-unquote James White role.
Yep.
He's going to have the pass-catching role as well. It is Ramondre Stevenson.
Again, part two.
S-E-N.
Wow.
Yeah, very excited for him. Easy top 12 running back this year for Ramondre Stevenson.
Another one here, James Conner. Arizona goes out and gets one of the best offensive linemen in the draft in the first round in Paris Johnson. But you look at this depth chart, guys, it's James Conner, and then it's Corey Clement, Keontae Ingram. They didn't draft a running back. It's all there for James Conner.
It is. Again, there's going to be, there's a couple of veterans that are still out there. Just before we went to air, the Bills signed Latavius Murray. Ezekiel Elliott is the biggest name that's still out there. But there's guys that are still out there. So we'll see. Zeke's going to land somewhere, and that's going to hurt the fantasy value of whoever he gets. But at the moment, to your point, it's only Corey Clement and Keontae Ingram. They like Ingram, and I thought Ingram had some nice moments last year. But James Conner is their workhorse. Back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 total yards and 8 touchdowns. He's one of only 7 running backs that can say that. He's averaged over 15 fantasy points per game each of the last 2 years. And for all the concerns about the injury history with James Conner, this is a guy who's played at least 90% of the snaps 5 of the last 7 games. Like, he battled through injuries each of the last 2 years. You know, he always misses a little bit of time, but I feel like he's kind of shaken the really injury-prone bug. And this is what's nice about Conner is the pass-catching ability. So this team's going to be bad.
Really bad.
The Cardinals are going to be bad. The Cardinals are going to be in the hunt for the number 1 overall pick next year, especially, by the way, if they decide to take their time and letting Kyler Murray come back.
Which they will, surely.
Yes.
Right, like they're just like, it ain't our year, right?
It's a new regime and a new coach. They have no
it's
rush.
our year, no pressure. You know what, Kyler, take your time.
Yep.
And so as a result, but what that means is, like, because Connor's a nice pass catcher, he's not somebody that has to come off in third down when they're trailing, when they're down big. So James Conner, I think, is a top 20 fantasy running back, and somebody that when you go into drafts, no one will be excited when you draft him, but all he's going to do is produce for you.
Yep, 58 targets last year. I think that was the big thing. And also showing that, you know, he could produce on a bad team, which the Cardinals were last year and probably will be again this year. I mean, he had the awesome year 2 years ago when they were a playoff team and in the mix for the 1 seed, and he had 15 touchdowns, but he was still able to go over 1,000 yards and still get a decent number of touchdowns on a mediocre team.
He is one of the best finishers around the goal line in the NFL, and so we expect that role to continue as well.
Staying in the NFC, the Bucs also did not draft a running back, much like Arizona didn't. Rashad White right now, Barry, I know he's hanging around your top 25 running backs in your projected rankings. I mean, this depth chart, guys, you have Rashad White, Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn. We know they let Leonard Fournette go this offseason. Another group that there's just not much there.
The comments coming out of Tampa Bay in the offseason have been like, we think he can be a stud. That's their words, you know, that he can be, a true 3-down back. We saw moments of it last year. I think he can take the next step. That's what's exciting is that this is somebody that coming out of college wasn't profiled as a quote 3rd-down back, right? I mean, but like he sort of had to become that with Leonard Fournette last year. So we and Tom Brady trusted him in pass pro. Now, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask under center, don't be surprised if they're dumping it off a lot. So because the pass-catching role of White, and we know he can go between the tackles, this is, again, it's going to be a bad team, but it's not a division that scares you, and the workload, especially the passing game usage, should elevate him. Again, to your point, he's somewhere in that 20 to 25 range.
Yep. I think they're the weirdest team in the league. The
Right.
Bucs don't really understand what's going on. Like, they, in theory, should be rebuilding without Brady, but, you know, there's still Godwin and Evans, and the offensive line is okay. The defense should be pretty good. Baker Mayfield's just randomly there and the starting quarterback. I don't really understand this team at all, but certainly they've got some upside. Like, they could win that division. Why not?
It's a veteran roster with no clear-cut answer at quarterback.
But by the way, if there's no clear-cut answer at quarterback, you know what you do? You hand it off.
Yep.
You go run heavy. They have a defensive-minded head coach. We'll see what he may just say, like, listen, we don't have TB12 back there anymore. Like, you're handing it off. I'm going to try to win every game 15-14. You know what I mean?
That's Todd Bowles' way.
No, exactly.
Yes.
No, seriously. Todd Bowles just be
Yes.
like 17-14. That's my ideal win and I want to run the ball 30 times. And anyway, Rashad White is somebody that comes out of the draft as a love because Tampa Bay was a team that was rumored to maybe look to add running back depth, and they didn't.
Back to the rookies here. Jahmyr Gibbs, a surprise top 15 pick. And listen, I mean, for the Lions here, it was out with DeAndre Swift immediately, in with Jahmyr Gibbs, explosive big play threat, both as an outside runner and as a pass catcher. 11 of the last 12 running backs to be drafted in the first round saw 200-plus touches during their rookie season. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I know it's kind of a crowded backfield, but when you value him that way, it doesn't matter.
No. Here's the thing. At the moment of draft day, we're like, what? What are you doing? But now,
That's exactly what I did.
Now that DeAndre Swift is no longer there, we'll talk about that in a second, but our immediate reaction was, when we were doing our draft reaction, was, man,
what are they doing?
Just when you thought the Detroit Lions couldn't hate DeAndre Swift anymore, they truly, with a fiery passion, with a Jay Croucher-like passion, hate Jahmyr Gibbs. And hate DeAndre Swift. They love Jahmyr Gibbs. They hate DeAndre Swift, much in the way that Jay Croucher hates you by spoiling all the movies. And what I would tell you, and all of us, by the way, just so you know, all of us, he hates all of us.
I really do.
Right, especially me and Connor. But what I will tell you here is that I love this landing spot with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now that DeAndre Swift is on the Eagles, and we'll talk about that in a second, he goes to a team that has a great offensive line, has a really creative play caller in Ben Johnson, is looking for offense, especially with Jamison Williams suspended for 6 games, TJ Hawkinson down to Minnesota. Other than Amon-Ra St. Brown, they don't have an established playmaker. Now, David Montgomery is on the roster, but I got news for you. David Montgomery isn't good. David Montgomery is just there. David Montgomery is just a guy who shows up. Yeah. He's fine. You know what I mean? But, he just shows up. Gibbs has a chance to be special. Remember, DeAndre Swift, for all the hatred of DeAndre Swift in Detroit, the fact is this is a guy who saw at least 70 targets each of the last 2 years. Each of the 3 seasons he's in Detroit, DeAndre Swift finished as a top 15 fantasy running back on a points per game basis. Again, he missed time. They didn't like him. They wouldn't give him double-digit touches. And yet he still found a way to being a top 15 fantasy running back. Now you get Jahmyr Gibbs behind that offensive line, in that offense, with a team that has invested serious draft capital into him. My guess is that when early drafts happen, Montgomery will go ahead of Gibbs because people assume Montgomery's getting the Jamal Williams role and the more touchdown. But I think there's, much like last year we kept saying, guys, give me Ramondre Stevenson over Damian Harris. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery. I'm calling it right now. Give me Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery.
Yeah, first of all, brutal attack on David Montgomery being talked about like a guy who's just in the HR
street
system.
Free agent.
Yeah, he's just in Gusto, and that's it.
He is. By the way, he is just a guy.
Yeah.
He's one of the least efficient running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, he's on the computer.
With Connor Rogers.
Listen, I'm all on the Gibbs train for this one.
Yeah,
but
no,
I do worry that Campbell looks at Montgomery and goes between the tackles, goal line touches. Feed him.
He's David Montgomery is, if we were in baseball, he's an innings eater. That's what he is.
Yeah.
He's
long relief.
He's Jeff Suppan.
Yes, exactly.
That's an incredible call.
Yes.
God.
Right. Tell me I'm wrong.
Do you reckon I'm the only Australian who's made reference to Jeff Suppan today in the state of Connecticut?
Yeah, probably in the United States.
Yeah, we just got confirmation.
But Con, are you a Montgomery guy?
No, not anymore. This is my take on it. I think Gibbs can be their Kamara. And if that's the case, that's not, the role and the usage is all there for Gibbs to be the Lions version of Kamara. And if that's the case, then I don't care about David Montgomery in this offense.
I think the thing is, too, is it's a kind of corollary to following the money. You have to follow the organizational incentives, and the fact that they reached for Gibbs so badly. He was a coin flip to go in the first round, and they took him as early as they did. The fact that they spent that much capital on him, they have to play him. They have to give him the chance to fail.
Right. They spent that much capital on him when they had DeAndre Swift on the roster.
Yes.
That's my point. Now it's all cleared out and everything like that. And they didn't get much for Swift. They got a 5 and a 7, I think.
I think it's a future long-term 4 or a 5.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's what it
down the road.
They got a 7 back, and they got, it's not much. It's
no,
a 4 and a 5 or something like that.
It was definitely waving the white flag that we are done with this guy.
Did you see the reaction as well from Dan Campbell and the team when they drafted Gibbs? It was like they drafted present-day Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, they won the draft is the reaction. Yes.
Reach for a guy 20 sorts too early.
Anyway, Gibbs over Montgomery, and he's a love for me.
A couple more running backs here. Devon A-Chain from your Texas A&M squad, of course. Miami loves speed, and they found it in the draft with A-Chain. Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, Isaiah Pacheco. The Chiefs not really that active. McKinnon's still out there, so we'll see.
So I think they re-signed McKinnon, but right now it's really Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they've sort of made they've made how they feel about CEH pretty clear. Sanders and Hubbard is the same as we've talked about with Pollard or Connor. Just the Panthers didn't add anybody.
Yep.
And so that's a team that's likely going to run a lot to try to take some pressure off of Bryce Young. And the Devon A-Chain, just absolutely love the player, love the speed. He'll be third on the depth chart behind Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr., but both guys injury prone. They're hurt all the time. Mike McDaniel went in to get him. A-Chain is a great fit for the kind of offense McDaniel runs. Love Devon A-Chain.
All right, time to get into the hate list here. A couple running backs that things did not go their way through the NFL draft, and this was a little bit of a surprise for us guys. The Seattle Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet on day 2 of the draft. We obviously love Kenneth Walker. Charbonnet was my RB3 in this draft. Yeah. For Seattle, if you're a Seattle fan, this is awesome. Now you have 2 great running backs. If you like these guys in fantasy, especially Kenneth Walker, whether he's on your dynasty roster or a keeper, or you just wanted to draft him early, this is undoubtedly going to significantly eat into his workload.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw the big plays for Walker. We saw the explosive plays. We saw the wow plays, right? But what the other thing is like, here's a guy that played on less than 30, I'm talking about Walker now. He played on less than 30% on third downs last year. They weren't really using him as a pass catcher. He had 33 carries where he was tackled for a loss. That's third most among all running backs. This is a guy who didn't play for the first 5 weeks of the season, basically. He had 7 games last year where he averaged under 4 yards per carry. A lot of the yards per carry stuff was kind of, buoyed, I guess, however you want to say it, but propped up by these long runs that sort of skewed that. And so, he wasn't super efficient. Again, he also got a little bit banged up. It was his rookie year. I'm still a big Ken Walker fan, but I could see Seattle sitting here saying, like, hey, we like him, but we're not 100% sure. And oh, by the way, whether it was Rashad Penny, whether it was Chris Carson, whether it was even Ken Walker a little bit last year in terms of being banged up, they've dealt with running back injuries quite a bit, and you know how much Pete Carroll likes to run the ball, so depth makes sense. Charbonnet's a really talented player. You can't fault Seattle for saying, like, hey, we're going to add to this offense. I think if you are a dynasty manager of Geno Smith, you're thrilled with what the Seahawks did. I think if you're a Seahawks fan, you should be thrilled. But I think if you're a dynasty manager of Ken Walker, like, I don't know, this guy is, you're like, man, come on.
Ken Walker's a weird one because the advanced numbers don't really love him because he did have that dependence on where he's just breaking 60-yard runs for fun. Right. He scored 1 touchdown in his last 6 games of the season as well, so that dried up. He's constantly injured. He started the season injured. He ended the season kind of injured. He's playing through an ankle. But I don't know, just watching him, like he runs so angry. He was incredible at the end of the season. He won them that game against the Rams to basically get them into the playoffs. Like, the talent is there, but now you just worry. Also with the passing game, they've improved their passing game too, and Geno's a legit quarterback. So it just feels like there's just too many guys. Like, I think everyone on Seattle lost.
Right, and by the way, and Jay, you and I talked, just to going back to Walker for a second, you and I and Michael Smith talked about Walker on Fantasy Football pregame, like on week 4 or something like that. While Penny was still the starter, he was still healthy in the starter, we were just talking about sort of sneaky pickups, like grab a guy and stash him. And I mentioned Ken Walker and said that, like, I had heard from a source in Seattle that told me, they're like, this kid can be LaDainian Tomlinson. Yeah. Like, that's who he reminds us of. Like, again, not saying he's going to be one of the greatest running backs of all time, but just that's how high they were internally on him. So it's a little, that was at a year ago. So it's certainly grabbing Charbonnet was surprising, but in another situation, he'd be ranked higher. But Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, honestly, the entire Seattle offense is a hate because just more talented players means less of the ball to go around.
Yep.
All right, moving over to the Saints. Alvin Kamara makes the list here. The Saints signed Jamal Williams. We know Jamal Williams just feasts at the goal line. Yep. That's what he does. And then they drafted Kendre Miller in the 3rd round, a bigger running back that can run in between the tackles.
Yeah, talk about Miller a little bit here.
Miller's a good player. 3rd round surprised me a little bit. He's a bigger back. He's got good contact balance. He's got good vision. Nothing splashy, nothing flashy. He's not going to be this home run hitting kind of guy. And taking him in the 3rd round after signing Jamal Williams signals 2 things to me. 1, they're bracing for a Kamara suspension. Duh, everybody knows that. But 2, when you look at this team, it feels like those guys are going to get the bulk of the actual carries, the running. And maybe Kamara's just being very pigeonholed into even more of a pass-catching role than we've ever seen. So this pick really, really surprised me with the Saints.
Yeah, I mean, unless they just sort of think, you know what, hey, we're just going to go. I mean, by the way, they're remaking this offense, right, with Derek Carr. I mean, and so maybe they're just like, you know what, we want to set up play action for Carr to Olave, so we want guys that can go between the tackles, and we're not going to try to do this stuff. I mean, remember this about Kamara. In addition to the looming suspension, He's also been hurt significantly last couple of years. Last year, a target share of 18%. That was a career low. They're not even using him in the passing game. They still have Taysom Hill there. You know,
it's going to be a thing. He's going to be a thing.
It's going to be an annoying thing as well. It's just, and the last thing I'll say here is that they didn't use him this way in Detroit. But if you think back to Jamal Williams in Green Bay, he's a really good pass-catching running back.
Yep.
They used Swift in that role in Detroit, but it's not a skill that Jamal Williams has forgotten. So there's a scenario where Miller is the between the tackles guy, and they use Williams.
I think so.
And certainly in pass pro because he's more of a veteran. Carl. I don't know. They just may be done with Alvin Kamara.
That's
everything.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think this is the beginning of the end for Kamara in New Orleans.
And I think it's not just about the usage and the potential suspension. He just hasn't been good for 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe that's been banged up, but he just has he scored 4 touchdowns total last year. He had more than that on Christmas against the Vikings
Yes,
2
he
years
did.
ago alone. So he just hasn't been the same guy. Hasn't been as explosive. The receiving has just dried up. I memean, he hasn't topped 490 receiving yards the past 2 seasons, where he's up around 800 in his prime. So just doesn't seem like the same guy, and just doesn't look like he's going to be there.
And Kamara, So anyway, Kamara was already going to be on the hate list because of the suspension, because of all those things. But then you add Miller with third-round draft capital, a day 2 pick. You sort of think this is not,
To your point about
Makes the
Jamal
hate
Williams, he's one of the best pass-protecting backs in the NFL, and that is vital for Derek Carr. You have to protect Derek Carr for him to have success, and I think Carr is going to pound the
There's
table.
a lot of things you have to do for Derek Carr for him to have success. But yes, certainly
Protection.
Protection is a big one of them. Yeah.
All right, looking at the Eagles' backfield, what a group this has become, guys. DeAndre Swift thrown into the mix, as we hinted at earlier. Rashad Penny on that low-flyer deal. And Kenneth Gainwell, who they really, really like and had moments last season, especially in the playoffs. The Eagles' three-headed monster is going to be pretty difficult to figure out.
Also, Jalen Hurts.
And Jalen Hurts runs.
Right, and honestly, the truth is probably none of them get the ball at the goal line. You've also got Boston Scott,
Of course. For the Giants games, that's where Boston Scott comes out. Yeah,
1,000%.
They unleash him.
The concern on DeAndre, all these guys, you're probably going to be stuck with one of them at the end of your draft, but ideally, all of them make my hate list because, to your point, right? So, they just don't throw to the running back. No team in the NFL had a lower running back target share last year than the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's a real concern for Swift because that's where he basically made his fantasy bones, if you will, is as a pass catcher in Detroit. Obviously, you have the injury concerns with Swift and Penny. If anything were to happen to one of them, then certainly you'd see an uptick in value for the other one that's still healthy. But the fact is that over the last 2 seasons, Jalen Hurts has 23 rushing touchdowns. That is tied for the second most, I should say, among all players in the NFL. Not running backs, all players in the NFL, tied for second most. So Hurts is always a threat to take it. In terms of passing game usage, you've got Smith, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Dallas Goedert. They don't throw to the running backs, really. So now you've got Penny, Swift, Gainwell, maybe Scott. Listen, and they're all home run hitters in their own way, especially, Swift and Penny. So behind that offensive line, you can certainly see them having a 6 for 90, 1 touchdown game. But it's going to be hard to predict when those guys are going to burst out for a big run. If I have to pick an Eagles running back, give me DeAndre Swift over Penny and Gainwell, but all of them make the hate list. All of them lost value by this backfield becoming as crowded as it did.
Yeah, in one of the first 2 weeks this coming season, one of these guys, Swift or Penny, is going to go off for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you trade him immediately. You trade him the next day because it's just not going to last. Just Hurts at the goal line just pillages so many of those touchdowns that it's just not going to be valued. It's going to
they're going to want, listen, even though Shane Steichen is in Indianapolis, they're going to keep the same offensive system. They're going to, Sirianni was a multiple running back guy in Indianapolis. He's been a multiple running back guy in Philadelphia to date. I think he will continue to be. So certainly Swift, Penny, Gainwell, I'm annoyed as a Commanders fan because the Eagles are going to be really good next year and really hard to defend, but they're also going to be really hard to predict for fantasy.
Our last running back on the list, we gave a lot of love to Bijan Robinson for obvious reasons, but with that comes a little bit of disappointment now for the future of Tyler Algier here, Jay.
Yeah, which is a shame because Tyler Algier had quietly an awesome
great
season.
find.
Yeah,
great fifth-round find.
And now he's going to be a fantastic backup running back. And I don't think that he's someone that you're going to be drafting expecting to start him unless Bijan goes down. I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's a rotation like Bijan Robinson is not Caleb Huntley. Algier is going to be marginalized, and I expect he's someone that you carry as insurance if Bijan goes down, and that's about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just want to take this moment to talk about Tyler Algier for this reason. And so I wrote a love-hate column for NBCSportsEdge.com, rotoworld.com. It's up right now on the site. It's free. Go check it out. But one of the points that I made is like, again, value changes all the time. Think about a year ago from the Atlanta Falcons, and we were all excited. Wow, Drake London, 8th pick overall, going to Atlanta, massive target share incoming for Drake London. We love the player. We love the opportunity. And no one was talking about their 5th-round pick, Tyler Algier.
Yep.
Drake London, obviously, a real disappointment for fantasy. They just never threw the ball, you know, and Tyler Algier was a 1,000-yard rusher. So my point is that we can sit here and talk all we want about draft capital and opportunity, but ultimately, just remember, at some point, coaches take over, and not always rational coaching.
Absolutely.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.